What's going on, Crimson Tide Nation, College Football Nation? This is Jan716 back here again, and today I want to talk to you guys about what games should Alabama fans pay attention to. Now, of course, Alabama plays Western Carolina, 11 Central Time. Of course, I'm on the East Coast, so it's going to be 12 for me. So, besides that game, which Alabama should definitely win, there are going to be some games that I think Bama fans should definitely pay close attention to. So we're going to hop straight into that thing right about now. So the first game is, of course, the Penn State-Ohio State game. Very, very important game because this game could determine potentially two teams in the college football playoffs. Of course, if Penn State beats Ohio State and Penn State wins out, Ohio State wins out the rest of their schedule too, the probability of both teams that are going to make it to the college football playoffs are very, very high. Now, of course, that's even if, in my opinion, that's even if Georgia beats LSU, because Penn State has lost to a top 10 ranked opponent in Minnesota right now. Georgia has lost to an unranked South Carolina football team. So I even think that if Penn State can just win out, they've had a tough strength of schedule. Georgia has a better one, but that ugly loss to South Carolina at home will probably cost Georgia at the end. So I think that if you're an Alabama fan, you want to root against Penn State. Winning against Ohio State, that's a very, very important game. This is going to be at the Horseshoe. I expect Ohio State to win this game in a pretty close game. But yeah, if you're a Bama fan, you want Ohio State to win that football game. Another game that I think Bama fans should definitely pay attention to is Oklahoma going against TCU. Really important game there. Oklahoma, they're not out of the college football race. They're not out by a long shot. I mean, these guys are still in it. If they beat TCU, if they win out the rest of their games, they'll have more ranked wins than Alabama and some of the Pac-12 schools that I'm going to name in a few. They're just going to have a better resume than most of the teams that are trying to fight for a playoff position. Maybe besides Georgia or if Penn State can win out. But Oklahoma will have a strong case. Now, of course, we all know the way that they've played, they don't deserve to get in. But still, Oklahoma, if they win out and if they can, let's say, have a more dominant performance against, let's say, TCU, against Oklahoma State, and then, of course, in the Big 12 championship game, which most likely could be a rematch against Baylor, Oklahoma definitely has a strong case. So I think that Oklahoma going against TCU, and I know that some people say, well, Oklahoma's going to win that game easily. I'm not so sure about that. Oklahoma has struggled ever since Kansas State, right? They got Kansas State, Iowa State. They barely won that game at home against Iowa State. By the way, that was also a night game. And then, of course, being down 25 points to who do they play? Being down 25 points to Baylor. How did I forget about that? Yeah, but being down 25 points to Baylor. So I don't know. I don't know. TCU, they've played Baylor extremely close. They've played Oklahoma State extremely close. And they've also beaten Texas. So TCU has not been just a stepping stone for the rest of the Big 12. They have, even though they're a 5-5 football team, they have been a very, very strong contender. As far as just competing against other teams in the Big 12. So do not expect that one to be easy for Oklahoma to win. I expect that one to be close. So I think if you're a Bama fan, of course, you want the upset so that Oklahoma season could be over and we don't have to worry about them. So Bama fans, I think you guys should definitely pay attention to that game as well. Some people may include Georgia and A&M. That's going to be a big game because if A&M could beat Georgia, then Georgia will probably be out of the playoff race, especially maybe even being a two-loss SEC champion. I would say it's more 50-50 split. I mean, the committee will have a huge discussion, but that's two unranked teams that Georgia lost to. Even if they beat LSU in the SEC championship game, I don't know if they'll include them in there. So, of course, I understand if some Bama fans will say, okay, well, we need to root for A&M against Georgia, but I don't know. I just think that Georgia being in the SEC and winning and just winning the SEC in general, especially with Georgia's strength of schedule, I don't see this game as just a huge important game that I think Bama fans should follow. One game though, and this is probably going to be the most important one, is Oregon going on the road against Arizona State. Every single year, we have one of those games that you have this strong top 10 foe, this strong top 10, team that's going on the road against a team that you will give that team no shot to win against. Every year, right? It happened Iowa 2017. It happened Purdue. Ironically, I'm naming Ohio State with those embarrassing losses. But, of course, we can go all the way back. It happens every single year. I remember Oklahoma State going on the road against Iowa State and praying that Iowa State can get that upset. It was a long shot, but Iowa State, they won and ultimately got Bama into the playoffs, to the national championship, and crushed LSU. So every single year we have that game. This could be that game. Arizona State, they have the offensive personnel. They have the quarterback in Jaden Daniels, who's played phenomenal this year. They have one of the best running backs in the country in Eno Benjamin. They got a great receiving core. Defensively, yes, they're very, very questionable, but you're talking about a team that's still alive for bowl eligibility. This is a team that has competed against some really, really good teams in the Pac-12. It's at home, and it's a night game. It happens every single year. And this could be this game. If Arizona State can win against Oregon, Oregon will be a 2-loss team. And if Oregon can win the Pac-12 championship against Utah, then the probability of Bama going into the playoffs, it goes up significantly. So this is a very important game that I think Bama fans should definitely pay attention to. Now, of course, even if Utah beats Oregon, which is a 2-loss team, the Bama beats Auburn on the road. And Auburn's losses were against top 10 ranked opponents. All of them very, very close losses. I mean, you can make an argument that Auburn is a better football team than Oregon. You can make that argument. You can make an argument that Auburn win is actually more significantly better than Utah's win against Oregon in the Pac-12 championship. So this is a very, very important game. Is Arizona State going to win this game? I don't know. Oregon can just go in there and they can dominate. But Oregon hasn't had the dominating type of season that pretty much everyone makes Oregon look like. Like, they haven't been really dominant this year. They've really only had maybe 3 or 4 dominant wins. And 2 of those wins were the last couple of weeks against Arizona and USC. They've struggled against Stanford. They've struggled against Cal. They've struggled against Washington and Washington State. They've had struggle wins. And this was definitely coming off an Auburn loss. And it's pretty recent too. It's like 3 weeks ago was that struggle win against Washington. So the possibility of this happening, it's possible. Arizona State has the personnel to beat Oregon. The question is do they have enough motivation? Do they have enough courage? Can they will out this win? Right? It took everything Purdue had in order to crush Ohio State. It took everything Iowa had to crush Ohio State, right? We go back to the Iowa State situation. It took everything Iowa State had to beat Oklahoma State. This could be that game that could define who makes it to the playoffs. Whether if it's Bama, whether if it's Oregon, Oklahoma, Georgia, Penn State. I mean, this could be that game that we can look back by the end of the year and said this is the game that potentially got whoever, Bama, Georgia, Penn State, whoever in the college football playoffs in that 4 slot. So those are the games that I think every Bama fan should pay attention to. Very, very important week, especially for Alabama. We're really the next couple of weeks very important because you got this game and then of course there's Auburn, and we'll see what happens then. So hopefully chaos can happen, and hopefully Alabama could fit at that number 4 slot and make it in the playoffs with Mac Jones leading the way. So anyway, guys, that's all I got. This is Jan716. I'll be back later on with more content. Peace.